back to the ball. Don't do it. Don't do it!
Oh my god, the wire coming to the skin!
Oh, I can't handle it.
This is so hard to watch.
Oh man. Feed that tapeworm.
Oh my god, this movie.
Hello everybody,
Hi there.
and welcome to Evil Asterisk Podcast with Jeannie.
And Luis.
Alright, we saw an amazing inverted fairy tale called The Ugly Stepsister, and you can probably guess what this movie is based on.
Cinderella.
Yeah, the fairy tale Cinderella. Before we get started, we're going to quickly read through the IMDb description. Elvira battles against her gorgeous stepsister in a realm where beauty reigns supreme. She resorts to extreme measures to captivate the prince amidst a ruthless competition for physical perfection. So that kind of tells you that this movie focuses a lot on beauty and competition for beauty. It's based on the idea of Cinderella, so you can imagine that the prince is involved and it's about presenting yourself to the prince. I will tell you that the director and writer is Emilie Blichfeldt. The movie is a Norwegian film. I'm going to read the list of genres: body horror, psychological horror, satire, slasher horror, comedy, drama, and horror. And I would say body horror is spot on. Psychological horror, yes. There's definitely a lot of satire and definitely a lot of comedy in it. So it's got this dark comedy element for sure. I guess we can talk a little bit about the Cinderella components first.
Yeah,
and why.
And we can talk about the prologue as well.
So maybe we can start with the prologue since it kind of sets the stage. You're watching this film, you're seeing these scary woods and a carriage going through the woods. You start to bond with a particular character. It happens to be the quote-unquote ugly stepsister, Elvira. And she's this impressionable young woman who's reading this poetry that has apparently been written by the prince, but we're not really sure if he wrote it. She has these fantasies about marrying the prince. And you see through her mind that she's imagining herself marrying the prince and all these wonderful things that will happen. And there's this fantasy element right off the bat, but then you realize she's really in these dark, dank woods. Well, this family, which is her mom, her sister, and herself, so there's two sisters and the mother, they're heading over to what we're calling a manor of the mother's new husband.
Or husband-to-be.
Husband-to-be. They're heading to this other family's manor, and that's Otto and his daughter, who's Agnes. The mother's name is Rebecca, by the way. They're heading there because their mother's getting married to Agnes's father. So that's how the whole thing starts. The two get married, and then they have this wedding feast. They're eating the cake from this wedding feast, and then Otto basically drops dead right after eating the cake, right?
And he's very excited, and he's clearly thrilled about the wedding and having a wife again. And we have a suspicion that maybe his health wasn't all that good up to that point. Maybe he indulged in too much drink, too much food, and possibly too much sex. And as a result, he falls dead. Either a stroke or a heart attack.
Yeah, we're not sure what happened there.
But something happens when he's kind of flinging cake all over the place in a playful way. And it's very sad that he dies in that context.
Yeah, I don't know that we were sad because I thought it was funny because you just see him sort of fall and his face falls into the cake. And then right after that, there's this long pan from left to right that shows the condition of the table of this feast. And so you're watching this and you're thinking, wait, there's stuff crawling on the food. And you realize, oh my gosh, this is not right then. It's maybe a few days later and you still see that he's lying there on top of the cake and he has fallen on the cake. So it's like, it makes no sense. You see some worms crawling on the food and other things. So that's how this whole thing opens. The music is really interesting. It's flute based, harp based. There's a mixture of this medieval and classical music. And then you also have this Euro pop or Euro dance music mixed in with it. So you have real instruments, primarily harp and flute, and then you have this more modern dance.
Kind of the synth pop revival we got in the late 2000s, early 2010s. It's still here somehow. That hasn't gone out of fashion yet. So some people call it retro wave, I think, as well. So this music is so discordant, but at the same time works beautifully together. And you would think it wouldn't work, but it does.
Definitely the credit sequence sets the stage for the tone of the movie, because you realize, okay, we know this is going to be a horror movie, but there are comedic elements here. And you had mentioned something about the way it was shot.
Well, it's just stunning. It's the first time director helming this, and it's just, it feels like it's someone with a lot of experience. They really know what they're doing. It just looks beautiful. It was shot on digital on a Arri Alexa 35. You wouldn't know that it was shot on digital. It just looks luxurious and very bright when it needs to be bright, and very dark and grimy when it needs to be grimy. Like an exquisite piece of filmmaking.
Right. Yeah, Otto is now croaked. So he's only there for a very small portion of the film. And then you realize, you start piecing things together. You've got the main character that you identify with, and it's the quote-unquote ugly stepsister, Elvira. And then you've got the daughter of Otto, who is this Agnes character. As you're watching the film, you realize that Agnes is really the Cinderella character. In fact, they start calling her Cinderella at some point during the film. You're kind of flipped around because you identify more with the quote-unquote ugly stepsister throughout most of the film. So the main plot here is that the prince is throwing a ball. So again, this is very much like the original Cinderella story. The prince is throwing a ball because he wants to find his princess. He's ready to do that. All the virgins need to go to the ball, asked to go to the ball, present themselves to him so that he can choose one to be his princess. That is the main plot. And of course, the ugly stepsister, Elvira, who's already reading the prince's poetry, is completely in love with him and tells her stepsister, Agnes, who ends up being more of Cinderella, she tells him, I'm going to marry him. I want to marry him. So she's really focused on that. So when the ball is being planned, she's all for doing whatever she can to be chosen as the princess.
There's a really funny element here, which is, in any circumstance, in real life or even in the past, someone would say, when I marry the prince, it sounds ridiculous, and you immediately think of a fairy tale and then have something very unrealistic, an unrealistic goal. Of course, it's a very realistic goal in this story, because there is a prince, he's throwing a ball, he's picking a girl during the ball to marry. As insane as that sounds in real life, it was actually a perfectly real achievable goal here. The problem is that the girl who wants that is not traditionally beautiful. She's not perfect. She's far from it, at least from her mother's perspective and maybe her perspective. So it's unrealistic for her to think that, but it's not unrealistic for someone in that world to want that.
So what ends up happening throughout most of this film is we follow the journey of Elvira as she goes through her preparation for the ball. Now, her mother is all for doing whatever she can to help Elvira be chosen by the prince. So the focus is on perfecting Elvira, who is quote-unquote the ugly stepsister. She has braces on her teeth. We thought they were possibly rotted out teeth when we first saw them, and we weren't sure what was going on.
I thought they were wooden teeth.
Yeah, we weren't quite sure. It turns out that she has braces on her teeth. So that's one thing. And then she's a little overweight, a little pudgy. She goes through this process of trying to perfect herself for the ball. Her younger sister, Alma, is just horrified at the whole process that her sister's going through.
Just witnessing it firsthand.
Yeah, and she's young. She hasn't had her period yet. Well, she ends up getting it later on in the film. But she's just horrified. I don't want to live like this. I don't want to have anything to do with a prince and a ball or anything, or men in general, because this is a horrible way to live. So she has a completely different perspective. And then there's the Cinderella character, Agnes. She has been apparently having sex with the stable boy. And we can talk a little bit more about that in the spoiler section, but she has been having sex with them. And so she's about the age of Elvira, we think, and is maybe more worldly, understands the world a little bit better, understands she has to do what she needs to do. She and the stable boy are apparently in love, but she tells the stable boy she wants to go to the ball too.
Yeah, she literally tells him that she's going to have to try and marry the prince so she can get out of there.
Right. So her thing is, my father passed away, obviously, and what am I going to do? So I need to be able to get by. I don't have a father anymore to help me. There's some differences between the Cinderella story and this movie because Alma, the younger stepsister, is actually not like her older sibling. She doesn't care about any of this. So that's an interesting twist. And then we've got the mother who's doing everything she can to get her older daughter prepared for this ball. The stage is set for all this.
One thing that I wanted to mention is that it's short. It's like 100 minutes long, which is perfect for this.
It's perfect. It didn't feel short.
It
felt like it did everything it needed to do.
It's very well paced. It doesn't feel slow or fast. It just moves exactly it's supposed to move. Easy to watch. It really is a dark fairy tale with body horror thrown in.
And I should also say that it has a lot of comedic elements. I had mentioned that before with the credits, but there are things throughout the movie, little snippets of things that are funny, and there is a theme that goes throughout the movie that's also hilarious that goes even past the end credits, which we'll talk about in the spoiler section.
Yeah, it definitely knows how to be funny and when to be funny in a very, very, very dark way. So I appreciate dark humor, and Jeannie too. Mm-hmm. So for us, it's really fun to watch a movie like this, but that shouldn't take away from the fact that this is really a horror movie.
And it's a serious topic because we're looking at beauty, we're looking at societal pressure, we're looking at the way women have been treated throughout history, not just in this fantasy setting. But now, I had mentioned the substance. It's not necessarily a reference, but the general public got used to the concept of body horror with that movie, and it has similar themes. So I think that if you have seen the substance or you are thinking of seeing it, it would be a good idea maybe to see it before this one. You felt that this was more intense than the substance, and I actually in some ways felt the opposite. But
yeah, we're not on the same page there, but for me as a person, this had more impact and disgusted me more than the substance did. I think the substance has a veneer that couches some of the stuff you see on it, and this one doesn't.
Well, I think this has the fairy tale aspect going for it, which allows you to sort of relax more because you know basically how the fairy tale is going to go, and they don't really veer from the general plot, so you kind of know where things are heading.
That's absolutely true. And I wanted to reinforce this, and I think you agree with me. We need to stress that this is a horror movie. It's not just dark fantasy. It's not just a dark fairy tale. It's a legitimate horror movie. It doesn't have jump scares.
No.
It's not that kind of horror movie. But be forewarned, because you need to be able to handle body horror in general, like Cronenbergian level body horror. It's very much worth watching.
It's brilliant.
And it's brilliantly done, brilliantly executed. It sounds amazing. It looks amazing. The acting is just
impeccable.
Perfect. Well written. Moves well. Will haunt you in all the right ways. So it's...
And make you think.
Yeah. It will stay with you, I think, for a long time.
We can basically say that this follows the traditional Cinderella story, but from the perspective of one of the stepsisters. And it really goes through all aspects, but all from her point of view, because she's trying really hard to be the one that is chosen. Whereas Cinderella, she's just going to be herself.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting dichotomy between the two characters. And then you've got the stepmother who's really meddling, getting involved in a lot of ways and trying to make sure that her daughter gets chosen by the prince. That's her initial goal.
Your comment about how Cinderella knows who she is and that means she's okay or going to be okay in the fairy tale and here is very interesting, because the protagonist, our anti-hero, she doesn't know what she is. She's afraid and she's lost and she's being driven to do certain things and she suffers. Some things are done to her and she just has no clue. She will figure it out. But it shows how the journey for someone who's so lost and not getting the proper guidance is that much more complicated and difficult.
Absolutely.
Than someone who's sure of themselves and knows or has a feel for their place in the world.
One thing to mention about the character is that she has a bit of arrested development. We do see this fantasy life that she has about her marrying the prince and being very sure she's going to do it. Before the ball is even announced, she's like, oh, I'm going to marry the prince.
Yeah.
And that's it. And that's her world. So she already is, for whatever reason, focused on the fact that she wants to marry that prince. Her biological sister is completely different, doesn't care. And then we've got the Cinderella character who doesn't have arrested development. In fact, possibly is advanced sexually in that day and age in comparison to other girls her age, because she is having sex already. A lot of them are supposed to be virgins. And also, she's not so innocent. The original Cinderella story is this innocent girl who lost her father. Then there's this evil stepmother with her daughters in the way, and they're all trying to compete with her. It's a very different situation. She has a lot of strength. She is more worldly. She knows what the world's all about. She knows that she needs to get ahead.
Yes.
I think we can also basically say that this follows the fairy tale. It just is a different perspective on the fairy tale, and also the journey is very different. And there's a lot of horror elements in that journey. We're going to do our spoiler section now. Here we go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Spoiler! 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 Alert! Spoiler! Spoiler! Alert!
Alert! Spoiler!
Alert!
Spoiler!
Alert!
All right, here we are. So we talked about the credit sequence where we're panning across the table. We're seeing all kinds of worms eating the food. We think, okay, it's a few days later and he's still there and his head is still in the cake. Okay, that's funny. Well, guess what? His body never gets buried. So throughout the movie, poor Cinderella, we do have some empathy here. Agnes is like, you're spending a bunch of money on other things, which we're about to tell you. You're spending all this money, but you're not spending any money on burying my father. Then we see that they have moved his body into a separate room, or he's moved into a prone position in the same room. We don't know.
It's not clear. They definitely don't make it clear.
It's not clear, but he's in a room, lying there, and he's rotting away. So every so often, someone will go in that room for whatever reason. It's usually Cinderella. She'll be in there just to look at her dad, and he's rotting. So we see this decomposition happening throughout the movie, and it's funny. It's unexpected. All of a sudden, okay, there's the corpse again. Why isn't he getting buried? And I was thinking to myself, well, why doesn't she just go with the guy that she's been screwing around with in the stable? Isaac, I think his name is.
Yeah,
Isaac. And just go maybe late at night, take the body out and bury them out in the yard or something, or in the land.
He's a big guy and he's heavy. Worse than that, he is bloated.
Right.
And getting heavier because of the liquid.
They could have done it beforehand. Before he got bloated.
I think you need 2 to 3 strong males
to
drag a guy like that.
All right, whatever.
And that's why they had to pay someone to do it.
But I think it's funny. I will skip to the end. So they show him also after the end credits, and he's basically a pile of bones.
Yeah.
He's a skeleton. I think they could have taken that out. You don't think they could have taken a pile of bones and...
I thought you meant taking that out of the movie.
No. By the time he ended up being a pile of bones, I think they would have been able to bury him
but you
in
have
the
to
backyard.
remember that by the time that happens, there's hardly anyone left on that house.
The movie's done. By the end, he's a pile of bones, and they showed it after the end credits, which is hilarious. They've used humor as repetition and taken that throughout the movie, and I should say the filmmaker has done that, so good job. That was hilarious. I had mentioned that the Cinderella character said, why aren't you spending money on burying my father when you're spending money on everything else? Well, what is she spending money on? The mother, Rebecca, has been spending considerable money, we think, on various procedures for her daughter. And this is primarily through Dr. Esthétique, which is this dude that's, I guess, a plastic surgeon of the day,
clearly
right?
From France, who happens to have a clinic in town, and he's highly sought after.
This is what she's supposedly spending her money on. So we find out after the father dies, Cinderella's like, at least we have your mother's money.
Yeah.
She says that to Elvira. And Elvira's like, what are you talking about? We came here because you guys have money. So the marriage was all about money on both sides. There's land. We do have this manor, this large home, and that's about it. We don't know if the mother really does have money hidden away somewhere and that's how she's able to pay for these procedures, or if she's only doing weird favors, because we do find out that she has been providing sexual favors in some cases for some stuff. But we don't know if that's part of the aesthetique situation.
And early in the movie, we also see the people who they owe money to, or at least the husband owed money to, the new husband, come in and say that they're going to take all the land and some other stuff as well. So they're broke, but they don't lose their home, not just yet. And the mother, Rebecca, is basically in survival mode and doing whatever it takes to remain at roughly the same economic level and avoid going into poverty, because if they lose their house, it's going to be a whole different story. So she will do whatever it takes to do it, to the point where the plastic surgeon says, when are you paying me? And she's like, I'll pay you double after the ball. So think about it. It's a big expense. And she's betting that after the ball, the daughter will be engaged to either the prince or some rich dude, and then will be able to pay whoever she owes money to.
We'll talk about the procedures, and this is where the body horror starts to come in. So there's a series of procedures that her mother has her undergo in order to prepare her for the ball, almost as insurance that she will get engaged. Now, hopefully to the prince, but as Louise said, it could be someone else as well. But the daughter, of course, really wants to get engaged to the prince. This Dr. Aesthetique shows up, and the first thing he does is remove Elvira's braces. Now we realize, okay, they're braces.
In very dramatic fashion.
We had no idea they were braces, as I mentioned earlier. Luis said he thought she had wooden teeth. I thought they were rotted out teeth. They just looked really weird. But then we find out, okay, they're braces.
He removes the braces in some pretty dramatic fashion with a gigantic set of pliers.
Yeah, it's pretty dramatic, as Luis said, dramatic fashion, and just yanks them off. And you're thinking during that time, oh my gosh, this is horrible. He's just yanking off the braces. But hey, lo and behold, her teeth look great. Turns out fine, no problems. Seems pretty normal. No pain. She's not screaming or anything. Oh, okay. Some of us have gotten braces. We've had our braces removed, not by pliers, but we're okay, and our teeth are basically straight now. No problem. Tick that box. Next. Oh, your nose doesn't look quite right, he says. He gives her mother, Rebecca, a manual that shows illustrations of different noses that look much better. And she chooses number 7. And then the doctor takes a little hammer and chisel and proceeds to break Elvira's nose in 2 places.
2 different places.
And she is in utter pain. She's screaming, blood all over the place. Well, I shouldn't say all over the place. There's some blood, and she's screaming.
She's screaming in agony, basically. No anesthesia whatsoever.
Tick that box. People have had rhinoplasty here. Some people nowadays have had rhinoplasty. Yes, they have had anesthesia with that. Now we're going to skip over another thing that happens into a third procedure that Dr. Aesthetique conducts. Comes later in the movie, but it's the third one. It involves anesthesia.
Yeah, so basically the very cutting edge anesthesia he just got and introduced to some new thing that was amazing. Cocaine. And he rubs some cocaine powder under her eyelids, takes a sniff, strategic sniff, tactical sniff, and proceeds to thread a needle to literally thread eyelash extensions on her eyelids, poking holes that bleed.
Oh my gosh.
And there's a close-up shot of the thread going in, and you see the thread going to her skin, almost like a snake.
And this is done as like a suture, as you said. It's almost like something you'd see in an operation, in an OR or something. And what's interesting is that it's in a different location. It looks like it's in a theater. But the thing that's really creepy and scary about this scene is right before she's being given this anesthesia, she looks up and she sees a nurse who's going to help administer this to her. And the nurse's eyelashes look like the eyelashes she's going to end up getting, she thinks, that are spider-like. It looks like spiders. It's like eyelash extensions that we might have now, but done in a more spidery fashion and less of them. And then we see the woman's eyeball. One of her eyeballs is not facing forward. You just see the white of her eye, as if the muscle in her eye doesn't work anymore. Probably because of the procedure. So it's horrific. Luis had a point in which he got very squeamish and he had blinders where his hands were on either side of his eyes. And he was like, ooh. And I said, Luis, you never do that. Oh, this is a movie that really got him. Especially this part, and there's another part later that we'll talk about.
Yeah, I definitely got kind of squeamish there, and I had partial blinds. Didn't really miss anything. I think my eyes were open like 99.8% of the time.
Yeah.
But just knowing that I could kind of close them if I needed to was comforting. I don't usually cover my eyes when I watch horror movies. It's very hard to find one that creeps me out enough or scares me enough for me to do that. And usually ghosts won't do it, and serial killers won't do it, but gore, when it's done properly, when it's very realistic, can have that effect, because I'm kind of squeamish in real life too, at least with my blood. So I definitely had my face partially covered, partial blinders, because I needed a little bit of control and be able to kind of block that if things really kind of got out of hand. And of course, in the end, I didn't need to do much of it, but it was comforting to be able to do it.
I've seen him scream in theaters and freak out a little bit, sometimes scream here while we're watching stuff, but I have really hardly ever seen you take your hands to either side of your face like that to try to have that comfort of knowing you could just go boop, like a peekaboo move or something.
Yeah. I famously really screamed during an Event Horizon screening in Brazil back when the movie came out in 97, and basically scared 2 entire rows of the theater that jumped with me when I screamed.
I think you screamed during White Noise.
Oh, I did.
So that was the next procedure, but then we can tick that box off because we know that people get eyelash extensions here, but not in that same way.
The glued.
It's not the same type of procedure, but you can kind of see how all of these different procedures have counterparts in modern day aesthetics, let's just say. Then we have a situation that happened between those
we should go into that,
procedures 2 and 3, where the main character Elvira is looking at her body and she's not happy with it.
Normal
she
body.
Looks totally fine.
She looks great, yeah.
Totally normal. We haven't explained the nose thing because that's part of this. So one of the things that her mother does, and a lot of other girls' parents are doing, or mothers, a lot of girls in the town are being sent to this finishing school in order to perfect themselves before they present themselves to the prince. So what's happening is that the finishing school is going to perform a dance, and there are only certain girls that are chosen for this special dance that will be done at the ball and will highlight certain girls to be shown to the prince. Elvira's mother sends her to this finishing school. And she's very awkward there. She has this thing on her nose because of the fact that her nose was broken in 2 places. It has to heal. So this is weird. It's like a steampunk brass covering for her nose that I always said looked like Bane, a nose version of Bane thing. And then it sort of ties around like a headgear on the back of her head. She really stands out. She looks really awkward. She already isn't dancing quite well when she's there, probably because she feels awkward. And then she's got this thing on her nose. So it's very uncomfortable. But there's a point at which she is actually chosen to be a finalist for this dance and to possibly be featured. And then you find out at some point the dance instructor tells her, oh, yeah, your mother paid me to choose you.
Yeah.
So the mother has been doing something. She's been sleeping around, maybe deferring payment for the doctor aesthetic. And also in this case, maybe actually paying the dance instructor at the school. So that's happening. And it's just really uncomfortable. We had mentioned that something occurred between procedures 2 and 3. And that would be when Elvira and all the other girls actually go in one by one to see the director or the proprietor of the school, who talks with them and gives them maybe a pep talk or talks to them about what's going on. It's a private conversation. We don't know what the other girls are going through there. But when Elvira comes in, she's already been frustrated with the way she looks as far as her body is concerned. She wants to lose weight. She tells her that. And then the proprietor gives her
a very special gift,
which is a tapeworm egg.
It sounds completely insane, but of course tapeworms are real, and people often get tapeworm by eating uncooked meat.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It happens.
it's a real thing. But
Yeah.
here it's in this
It's intentional.
in this fantasy, it's on purpose. Tapeworm goes in and eats the food that you're eating and leaves less for you, and you lose weight.
Right. So you actually eat more to weigh less. And that's what she told her. And we had talked about, well, what is the counterpart here? And you had mentioned Ozempic.
Yeah, which of course doesn't eat you from the inside out, but
No.
you know, you do end up looking kind of skeletal.
And gaunt.
So you have to be
and-
careful with that.
Yeah, you got to be careful with
Losing
that.
a lot of fat in the face is usually not a good thing.
Right. That's just our idea of what the counterpart is here. It's not like we have a tapeworm egg eating
No.
frenzy right now.
And it's a type of almost like a deal with the devil here, because both the dance instructor and the proprietor of the place clearly have some sort of relationship.
Yeah, they do.
And they are a lesbian couple. The proprietor is this beautiful, beautiful woman in probably her late 30s. And she looks incredible when
Stunning.
she's very poised
Yes.
and
Coiffed.
She's very polite and attractive. She's kind of a role model to all of these girls. And here she is giving a student something that's actually dangerous.
Oh, and she also gives her a quote unquote antidote. At some point, you need to have this because otherwise you'll waste away.
Some type of dewormer, I guess.
She does share this information with her younger sister, Alma. And Alma is just disgusted with the fact that she's doing this. And
Yeah.
she actually abandons her at one point.
She
when
takes
they're-
off
when they're
and
in
leaves her alone in the forest, yeah. So this is a pretty big development. And symbolically, it does mean that she's selling her soul to the devil, quote unquote. It's not a point of no return, but it's a very serious step. And it goes against her own health, and someone who has a perfect body.
She
So
doesn't
what?
feel
There's
that.
a little bit of
A lot
baby
of
fat.
girls feel that, though. I mean,
Yeah.
this is not an unusual situation. If you take a counterpart to what's going on today, there are enough girls, and this has been going on through history, who feel that they need to meet some weird standard of
Yeah.
being super skinny, and this is
And of course-
well-known fact.
And
So-
media, whether it's mass media with television or social media, gets you in what, an extra 5 pounds or 10 pounds just because you're on screen somewhere.
Of course,
And
yeah.
that's extra pressure. So think
Right.
about this girl who's being told she was not good looking and worthless her whole life, and now she's getting a chance at being somebody, and even maybe a chance at marrying the prince, which sounded like lunacy in the beginning.
Right.
She just grabs onto this with both hands.
So again, we see that her transformation is actually working. So this is the important element here. We saw her braces come off. Her teeth look great. We saw her nose get broken in a couple places. That took a while to heal, but when that thing finally comes off her nose, she looks great. I never noticed her nose looking off in the first place, but
It was
doesn't-
just there was a little curve. It
Who
wasn't
cares?
anything major,
Yeah.
yeah.
So her nose looks fine. And then she ends up getting the eyelashes, spidery eyelashes. They look a little odd, but it completely matches what goes on today with women getting these eyelash extensions. It's almost the same thing, but it's a little less eyelashes and more spidery looking and longer. But it's a similar concept.
Well, they look kind of alien in a way, and that sets her apart from the other girls that don't have it.
And then we see that the tapeworm starts growing and eating. She has these weird gurgles in her stomach
It's amazing. The whole movie has these sounds like everywhere.
after she has the tapeworm. It's going on. It's kind of funny. That actually, again, adds to the humor of the movie. So you have that as a side effect, but also she has to eat more. So she's eating more. She's hiding food. She's eating more than she was before. She's feeding the tapeworm. But then you start to see she loses all kinds of weight. She looked great before, but it's that same thing about the beauty standards that we have. It hasn't changed from this fantasy 19th century world to now. It's still the same.
I just remember the Cinderella / Agnes is actually giving the main character more food, thinking she's going to fatten her up and make her be less of a competitor. Of course, she doesn't know she the tapeworm inside her.
We didn't mention or talk about the fact that she's not just giving her more food, she's actually giving her some of the rancid food that was on the table
That
at
was
the
our
feast.
suspicion, yeah.
Well, we saw some worms
Yeah.
and some stuff in there. So she's actually eating more gross stuff, and she's getting sick from that too. In addition to having the gurgling sounds in her stomach, this is where things start to go in the opposite direction. She's losing her hair. You see little clumps of hair start to come off.
Yeah, I wonder if the hair thing is some sort of iron deficiency, because the worms inside is probably bleeding
be.
internally. So that could be iron deficiency.
Well, I don't know if it's supposed to be realistic, but the point is that she's losing her hair, and I think that happens a lot. When you get poisoned, you lose your hair too. We're talking about the Cinderella character being a nice character in the original story. She's actually trying to sabotage the quote-unquote ugly stepsister by feeding her this food. That's actually cruel.
It is, absolutely.
So it shows that she has a cruel streak. Whether or not this started after the father died or before or whatever, like we said, nothing is black and white here. Every character has cruel sides, and the mother is cruel for putting her through this. You're saying, well, the mother's just trying to get by, but she's exploiting her daughter. So there's a lot of cruelty going on, and the two women are being cruel to their students.
According to Gemini, a tapeworm infection, if it's prolonged, can result in B12 deficiency. And if you have B12 deficiency, you can develop anemia. And if you have anemia, which is lack of healthy red blood cells, you can definitely start losing your hair.
So here's the next step in preparation. So she's got the nice teeth. Her nose is supposedly perfect. She has lost a lot of weight, and she has the eyelashes. And we should also mention that we noticed other students in the finishing school when they were dancing having the eyelashes, and the little bruising under the eyes that happens from that initial procedure. The other girls had that too.
All three of the featured players had the same procedure done.
So all these different things were happening, and she looks great. And then the costumer / wig maker comes by with a dress, and then we find out that he has a wig. She has this special dress her mom ordered, and it was made for her by this dressmaker. He comes by, he opens up his trunk, and there's this beautiful dress, and she can fit into it, of course, because she's super skinny. And then he notices that her hair's falling out. Well, he happens to also be a wig maker, so he grabs a wig and puts it on her head. And now look, voila, she's a new person. She is artificially modified, though. She's modified all these different aspects of herself, and she's hiding the fact that she's losing her hair by wearing a wig. But she's ready for the ball now. That's it. She's ready. And, as Louise said, featured players, she was chosen as the main dancer. Not because someone paid her at that point, because she's fine. She's got more confidence. She has more confidence because she's lost the weight and she looks different. So all of a sudden her confidence level went up to the point where her dancing actually improved.
It's important to mention that the instructor at some point told her that she was a waste of talent, saying that she had talent, but it was wasted on someone with her appearance. So clearly at the end, when she fixes the appearance and she already has a talent, plus the self-confidence, she gets the job.
That's it.
But it's also important to mention that the reason Rebecca, her mother, was able to pay for her dress and to pay for the wig, and those are very expensive things back then, was because she immediately goes on and sleeps with the dressmaker.
Yeah.
That's how she's paying for fame to a certain extent. Cinderella has been having sex with the stable boy.
So we're thinking she's not really a virgin.
Yeah, that's the assumption, right? Oh yeah, she's not a virgin. But the filmmaker made a very interesting choice when they shot the scene where she's discovered by the protagonist. The protagonist goes into the stables because she hears a noise, and she sees Cinderella on all fours and the stable boy behind her. The thing is, there's an extreme close-up of a certain butthole, and it's implied by the angle and by the close-up that Cinderella's strategy in this case, not to lose her virtue, since back then, before there was any kind of royal wedding or marriage, the doctor would go and inspect to see if the girl was virgin or not, and wouldn't let her get married if she wasn't a virgin. Basically, because of that close-up, you realize that she is a virgin.
She's technically a virgin.
Yeah. Technically, but not really. So it's kind of fascinating because it's realistic in a way. I know that used to happen a lot in the past.
Right. That's
Maybe it still does in certain cultures.
So we would say, well, she's not really a virgin because she's been having sex. It doesn't matter that she isn't having vaginal sex. But in that period of time and in line with the day and age of the fairy tale, as Louise said, they have to check, but they only check for the hymen. There's nothing else to check.
There's nothing else to check,
So she will legally be able to marry the prince. And you know what happens. Our protagonist, the ugly stepsister, is a hit at the ball. She is presented by her mother. All the girls are presented by their moms. And then it starts looking like a debutante ball. We talked about how it looks strangely similar to what it would be like at a debutante ball.
Or
presenting. And what's interesting is that Rebecca, the mother, is with her daughter. and prepping her to be presented at the ball. And she says, "Show me your paws." Elvira puts her hands out like paws, and then they bark. Arf,
Arf, arf.
arf, arf. And we're thinking, what is that? Well, it turns out that when she presents her, Rebecca walks behind her daughter and holds her hand up in the air like she's holding we don't know if it's a marionette string, a veil, or a leash. We don't know. It's invisible.
Or all three.
It's invisible. It's pantomime. And then Elvira walks around with her paws and going, arf, arf.
Kind of saying to the men in the room, I'll be servile and I'll be docile. And they all kind of go crazy over it.
Like a puppy dog. Oh, yeah, they loved it. And that was Luis's take on it. I think it's correct.
Signaling that she would be submissive.
That's got to be what it is.
It is.
So what I thought was interesting, though, is what is her mom doing holding this pantomime?
I think it signifies a veil. It's the erotic side of having a bride with a long veil. And how she's supposed to be pure, but also she's supposed to be naughty at the same time. So it's some weird dichotomy between that. The mother is a woman, and she's saying, here, I give you my daughter for you to do it as you wish. The veil only happens when they get married. This is a preview. Yeah.
It was interesting. It was different. But we thought it was strange. And so we were laughing. So again, another comedic element. But as we mentioned, she's a hit at this. Men are in line to dance with her. The only person she's interested in, though, is the prince. Ultimately, partially because she's the lead dancer in this group, and she somehow catches the prince's attention, not only through the dancing, but just through her presentation, I guess.
Her dog-like qualities.
And she just looks great, supposedly. The prince chooses her when he comes out to choose someone to dance with.
Yeah. He goes straight to her. It's like, would you do the honor of join me in this dance? They're having this
wonderful,
beautiful fairy tale moment. It's romantic.
Yeah. Although at one point her stomach rumbles.
Yes. As they're dancing, the stomach rumbles, and you hear, oh, I'm like, oh my God, you know what's going to happen here.
And you see a slight look on his face, like you're not sure, did he hear the rumble or not?
I think he's too horny to be thinking about anything else. And they're getting like almost like nose to nose, and there's like an implicit thing about, hey, like there's a kiss hiding in here somewhere.
And
then right at the very moment,
what happens? This beautiful blue gown arrives. Now, guess what? We forgot to talk about
the mother.
Okay, well, not just the mother. The Cinderella character, Agnes, is determined to go to this ball as well. So it's not like, oh yeah, whatever. She wants to go. Another thing we didn't mention is that soon after her father dies, there's some sort of confrontation, and she's relegated to being more of a servant.
She becomes Cinderella after a fight in which Rebecca, the mother, gets really angry at her and tells the other workers and says, put her to work. Basically saying this little girl thinks she's above me, but it's actually the opposite. I'm the woman of the house, I'm the widow, and now she's going to work for me.
That's what I think happened. There was some fight where Agnes asserted herself because it was her father's home. I don't remember what the fight was about, but it is about her asserting herself. The stepmother's like, no, it's our place now. You're out of here. So she moves her into, I guess, the servants' quarters, and she's pretty much alone. You don't see her with the servants, but you see her doing things that are very Cinderella-esque. You see her doing manual labor, bringing in wood.
Milking the cow.
Yeah, exactly. She's even feeding a little rat or a little mouse at one point. She hums a lot, too, which is very Cinderella-esque. Again, it's a bit humorous to see her like that, but she's fine. You feel like she's not going to have any issues in life.
Yeah.
You feel like she doesn't give a crap that she's been put into this servile position. She's like, whatever. She goes about her business. She's like, whistle while you work, which I guess is more of a Snow White reference. But she's just humming along and fine. And she has a great relationship with animals. She has her stable boy relationship, but she does want to go to the ball. And she makes it clear that she wants to go to that ball. Elvira witnesses the sexual act between Isaac, the stable boy, and Agnes, the Cinderella character. And she obviously tells on her. But what's interesting is she's in shock. She's like, what is that? You see a penis, there's all kinds of stuff. You see a butthole, a penis, and all kinds of other things. You see splooge at one point, and we were cracking up. Because it's funny.
Ejaculate.
Yeah. If you want to be more technical, sure, or clinical. She clearly tells on her, And she's just basically saying she's not a virgin, too. So she shouldn't even go to the ball. And the mother, the stepmother, forbids her from going to the ball. And she, I guess at that point, she's already considered Cinderella. But she forbids her from going to the ball, too. And she banishes Isak.
Yeah, he gets kicked out of town with
who knows where he went.
with his clothes only with the clothes on his back, and we assume he's never to be seen again.
Yeah, so he's no longer the stable boy. So that's gone. So we don't know what's going to happen there in that situation. Cinderella really wants to go to the ball, so she comes over and she finds a chest with her blue dress, the beautiful blue dress she wore at her father's wedding. She finds that dress, but before she grabs the dress, she puts 2 of her baby shoes that are also in that chest in her pocket. She's about to leave, but then what happens? Elvira sees her. Yeah, sees her with the dress, gets really angry with her, saying, "You're not going to the ball." And then you really see the anger, right? She's just completely livid, and she starts ripping the blue dress, just ripping it. She does not want her to have any chance of getting to that ball.
And the mother, Rebecca, even says that, hey, you don't have to worry about her going to the ball. She has nothing to wear.
Right. What happens? Cinderella takes the dress, goes and hangs out with her dad, with her dad's corpse for a little while, falls asleep, and the worms that have been running around on her dad's corpse end up on the dress. And I said during that moment, I said, "Oh, I wonder if those are silkworms. Are they going to help mend the dress?" And then you said...
And then Jeannie proceeded to spoil it for me because I did not remember anything like that in the original fairy tale.
And then you said, "Spoiler!"
Yeah.
I don't think that's in the original fairy tale. No,
anyway, she spoiled it for me because I would have never guessed. I did not think that was about to happen. And Jeannie's like, "Oh my God, they're going to mend the dress. It's so cute."
I know, it was.
Like, oh,
and that was
shit.
the scene that made us feel a little bit more empathic, more on Cinderella's side, because we've been kind of on Elvira's side. So it was like, oh, and it was a magical sequence. She falls asleep, and then the worms start mending the dress. Then all of a sudden we see the apparition of her dead mother, and the mother hadn't even played a part in this, but her mother obviously died before her father did. And it's a ghost. And the mother tells her, "The baby shoes that you have are now your shoes to be worn at the ball." She also sees that, of course, the dress has been mended. And then she tells her that she needs to make sure she is home by midnight, or her carriage is going to turn into a pumpkin.
In a very matter-of-fact way.
So her mother, the ghost of her mother, becomes fairy godmother from the original story. That was an interesting twist. The scene was very magical. Nice light in the scene and things sort of in the air. And remember the earlier scene where you see her table with her brush and her roses and stuff, and there were particles in the air.
Particles of dust, yeah.
I think they used that same type of photography.
Some suspended stuff.
It was really beautiful.
And by the way, because of this particular scene, sadly, we cannot say no ghosts in this one.
No, we cannot.
This is definitely a ghost.
But that's okay. That was a ghost, and it was a fairy godmother ghost. So we do have the fairy godmother in the story, but it's just a different character. It's her actual mother. So now back to the ball.
Back to the ranch.
Just as things are getting really wonderful and a connection is being made between the prince and Elvira, who shows up but Cinderella? Of course, she's late. So everybody is there. They're all dancing, and the room is just hushed. All of a sudden, we see this beautiful blue ball gown. We see a veil over Cinderella's face, so no one knows who she is. But just her presence is so attractive to the prince that he literally forgets about Elvira, and he goes over to this beautiful presence of this woman they cannot see, only sees the dress and a veil and feels the magic, right? And then they start dancing, and you never see her face. Actually, what was weird about that is you never saw her face until the very end, where she was dipped
upside down.
And then you see upside down, and then Elvira sees her. But Elvira acts like, oh, it's you, like she's surprised.
As if that wasn't obvious, yeah.
Wouldn't she have already known because of the dress?
I would assume so.
Now that Elvira has been rejected, basically, and forgotten, she starts to feel sick. She already has the gurgles in her stomach, and she goes into this back room and just starts to throw up finally. She throws up a bunch of tapeworm eggs because this tapeworm that's in her has been laying eggs. And so she throws that up. She has some bile or whatever that comes out. It's really gross. Her mother comes and says, hey, so what? So you blew it. So who cares about the prince? There are other men in there. Go.
There's a bunch of other men in there. Wake up.
So clearly the mother doesn't care about whether or not she marries the prince. That was always Elvira's dream. It wasn't her mother's dream, but her mother wants her to marry someone. So she's like, go in there. You got to marry one of these rich guys. After she throws up, she ends up dancing with a number of other guys, and one of them is this Salmon Earl or whatever.
He's the son of the Salmon King.
He's the son of the Salmon King. And he's asking her things like, do you like salmon? Do you like fish at all? And she's just going, ugh. She's feeling really sick. We find out later, after she gets home, because she's just a complete wreck, we find out that her mom is actually with the son of the Salmon King. She's like 30 years younger than her mom or something. And they're in there screwing. Her mom is just screwing with everybody. Back to the ball. At the point at which they're dipping, you see that the veil comes off of Cinderella, but she's being dipped. So you see her only from that angle. And then Elvira knows who she is. She freaks out. But then Cinderella immediately runs away. She's gone. So the veil stays on for the prince. The prince never sees her face. She leaves a shoe behind, in keeping with a fairy tale. And then the prince takes the shoe, holds it up in the air and says, I will marry the woman whose foot fits the shoe. So, of course, the ball is over. Everybody goes home. Elvira is in a horrible state of mind. She needs to get the other shoe because she doesn't want Cinderella to have that shoe or have the matching shoe, and she wants to fit into the shoe.
And of course she left after Cinderella.
So when she gets home in her carriage, there's a pumpkin sitting right next to her carriage, meaning the other carriage, the magical carriage, just turned back into a pumpkin. But yeah, she gets home, she's agitated, she wants to get that shoe. So
a cat fight ensues with the two girls, and the idea is that our protagonist is going to steal the remaining white shoe versus the one that was left in the castle, and she's going to show the prince that she's the one because she's going to wear the shoe instead of Cinderella. Of course, Cinderella has these dainty little feet, and our hero or anti-hero
has wide, large feet.
Has big feet with some sizable toes. So she decides to do the next best thing and just get rid of the problem altogether by cutting off her toes.
Ah!
And it's pretty horrific.
That might be the scene where someone you knew or heard of went to the emergency room after watching this.
Yeah, I read it on Facebook, and then I did a search for a friend saying that. I couldn't find anything, so maybe it wasn't a friend, but it was someone who were watching this movie at home and got so freaked out about one of the scenes, which we think is the toe cutting scene, that slipped or banged their head somewhere and had to go into the ER.
Oh my God.
Because they got so agitated. Now, we both think it's the toe scene. It
could be the toe cutting scene.
Yeah.
And it's funny, toe cutter, isn't that a Mad Max character?
It is.
It could be the toe cutting scene, or it could be the eyelash scene. I think that was harder for me to watch than the toe cutting scene. We've seen people hack off their toes in movies before, or at least maybe I have. She tries to hack off her toes. She doesn't fully make it. They're kind of half off.
And they're kind of hanging.
They're hanging.
Her mother enters the room in a very motherly way and says, "Oh, dear girl, I appreciate the effort, but you cut the toes in the wrong foot." And she did. She was thinking about the shoe she had at home and not the shoe that the prince was left holding. So now the mother's giving her some sort of liquid.
Which she, by the way, has been doing almost nightly because she's been in so much pain. She's been giving her some sort of opiate.
Yeah, we're not sure what it is.
But she does it again.
But she does it again, and I think 3 spoons and the girl's out. So after that happens, she gets the meat cleaver that was left on the ground after her daughter lost consciousness.
Right.
And basically finishes the job on one foot, goes to the other one in 2 phases in a drastic fashion, almost like a cook at a restaurant. Goes snap, snap, and cuts her toes.
This horrible mother is not just trying to make ends meet. She is evil.
Of course she's evil. It's obvious that she's evil.
It's
okay?
horrible.
There's no question about it.
Yeah, but you were saying, no. She just has to figure out how to make ends meet. No, she's conniving. She's forcing her daughter to do this. This is horrible.
Sure.
Okay, and then she participated in it. So I guess we jump to, she hacked all of her daughter's toes off. Then skip to the next morning. We hear "Pop-a-doo."
We hear the horn.
The prince
and she
is
immediately
here.
wakes up and knows the prince is there.
Her goal is to get down there as soon as possible and put her foot in the shoe and show that it fits her. In the morning, she's in bed. You see that her feet are completely bound and bleeding, and she has no way of getting out of the bed. So she can't walk. And now we're into the next phase of the body modification, which is foot binding, but to an extreme. Foot binding and hobbling will add. And we know foot binding has happened in certain cultures, but now we have missing toes, blood all over the place, bandaged, and an inability to walk.
What's interesting is that the way she falls, she's actually clearly trying to reach something on a side table, and then she falls. And when she falls, she lands face first. So now she has a broken tooth. So she has a broken tooth, she's on the ground, she can't move, she can't walk. So she's dragging herself. There's a staircase, a long, almost L-shaped staircase. She proceeds to slide down the staircase, bangs her head against the wall, and then she slides again and rolls. And at the very end of that slide, she breaks her nose and introduces a massive kink on her nose, like a curve.
Yes.
So now she has a broken tooth, a curved nose.
She's already losing her hair.
Some of the eyelashes fall off and they're gone. She's a mess. And as she lies at the bottom of the steps, she looks up, and then you see again upside down Cinderella in her beautiful blue dress, gives her a last look, walks outside, and you just hear it.
But you can see from the perspective that Cinderella is looking at the prince.
Yeah.
And he's having her put her foot in the shoe. And he's telling everybody, I have found my princess.
It cuts to a scene where you see the prince and Cinderella kissing. So a real scene,
it's
real
very
kiss.
Similar to the imagined scene that Elvira has had in her head.
In contrast to the fantasy.
Exactly.
You know?
But guess what? Her sister comes to her aid. So we go back to Alma, the younger sister, who doesn't want anything to do with his life and the way women are being treated. She sees her sister in utter pain. Her sister is broken. She takes her sister to an area where she can have her antidote. Remember, she had told her sister about this. Alma gives her the antidote and gets her ready. She ends up throwing up, and she throws up a lot of tapeworm. It goes on and on and on. And then her sister even pulls the tapeworm out of her mouth.
It's crazy.
and excises it, cuts it in half. Well, there's no half.
It's a menagerie of tapeworms. And yes, she does get a knife and cut the tapeworm at some point, killing it.
But there's a lot of tapeworm.
A lot of it. It's not only the tapeworm, but it might be the rotten food.
Yes. What happens after she throws up? You can see a little smile on her face, a little tiny glimmer of relief. She's got a broken tooth. Her hair's falling out. She's got a broken nose. Everything's messed up, but you know what? She looks happier than she's looked. Her sister's there for her, and I had mentioned that her sister was almost like the knight in shining armor that came to her rescue. Her sister says, we gotta go. She wraps her in a blanket. Her sister goes up to her mother's room. You see that the mother is still with the son of the Salmon King in the room. She takes some jewelry, which she presumably is going to use to make some money. She has the horse all ready to go. She's really logical. She's prepped. She gets her sister on the horse. Her sister, who cannot walk, she gets behind her sister, grabs the reins, holds her, and they go off into the forest. It's the same forest that you saw at the beginning of the movie, but it has a feeling of salvation. Luis, you had a really interesting thought about the new look of our main character.
Yeah, the main character basically starts looking like the stereotypical witch. She looks like the witch from Snow White.
She's now possibly the archetype of the crone. There's this idea of the crone living in the forest, and they're heading into the forest. It's another way for a woman to exist in the world. This idea of the woman having maybe her own power, and if we're going to be magical about it, the witch would have power and would help others and would be able to fend for herself and would not need a man and would have sisterhood and agency. And the crone is that archetype. You were right about looking like the witch in some of these animated movies, because that whole idea of being wrapped in that blanket.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and I had mentioned that Wicked, the book that was written long before the musical came out, was interesting because it was this reversal of the Wizard of Oz story from the perspective of the quote-unquote evil witch, the Wicked Witch of the West, and how you understand her perspective and where she came from. Now, that has been changed a bit over time with the musical and the movie. And this almost tells you there's an origin story. It's an origin story of another character that we really didn't hear about that may or may not be related to the Cinderella story.
Here we are seeing that a woman may choose not to have children, not to have sex, not to sell herself or enslave herself to a man, and she can find her own path. And it's interesting because our protagonist here, it takes her until the end of the movie when she loses all those external features that would configure her as some desirable young woman. Once she loses all of those, she doesn't have to be that anymore. She can be herself. She can be at peace with herself. She finds happiness. And even the fleeting smile we see at the very end, it's enough for you to see and to understand that she will be okay. She has a younger sister who's her protector.
She's an old soul, Alma.
And Alma means soul. The lesbian couple we mentioned earlier at the finishing school, it's a similar idea. For them to be happy and have comfort and have love with the one they chose, they had to end up working with the patriarchy there and prepare those girls for a life of servitude.
It's like slavery.
Women being put against women, so the stronger will have the most comfort and the most agency.
Like the survival of the fittest type of idea, but with women being pitted against each other and participating in all this. And the men really looking kind of weak. They're just out there trying to have sex. The men in this movie have not had much going on other than that.
No, they haven't. In contrast with the women, the men don't do much at all. They don't act. When they talk, it's kind of vapid. The men are just doing what's most comfortable and easier for them, while the women suffer.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is you've got the one male character who's the prince who has everything he wants anyway, and he's just looking for a princess. Then you've got these other guys that are running around looking for a woman. There's all these other men at the ball. They're all making really stupid comments and sexual innuendos about the women and objectifying them. I really like the Alma character because she grounds everything. She looks completely baffled when her sister's even getting the braces off. She's just like, no, this is ridiculous. I would never go through this.
Yeah.
And the nose and the blood. She's just, take the antidotes. She is the wise woman. She does get her period toward the end of the movie, and she does not tell anybody because she's horrified at what might happen if anybody knew.
Yeah.
So I think we should say again that we really enjoyed this film. It isn't for everybody because of the body horror, but I still think it's quite worth seeing. It covers a lot of really important issues. I did mention the substance, so if anybody's seen that, it might be something that you could be open to here. But I do think, in a lot of ways, because it's a fairy tale, it's a retelling of a fairy tale, it's a lot more accessible.
It's an easier movie to get into, for sure. It's just also, in my opinion, harder to watch because whatever gore is in there, it's very, very detailed and realistic. Yeah, but this is very much worth watching.
Yeah.
I'm saying that I give it 2 thumbs up and 2 toes up.
Yeah.
It deserves it.
I give it 2 thumbs up and 2 toes. So I guess we're giving it toes and thumbs up this time.
It's just brilliant all around.
Yeah.
Very much worth your time. It's
Yes.
only about 100 minutes long. And it'll kind of blow your mind.
It will. Excellent. I guess it's time to bid you adieu.
Bye-bye.
For now.
For now.
Toodaloo.